So, in this segment, we're going to be talking about UK business output slows for the sixth month in a row amid supply chain crisis. And we know for the most part what's caused these supply chain issues. It's the B word. British business output has slowed for the sixth month in a row amid a supply chain crisis, energy price crisis arises, and a shortage of workers, according to a closely watched survey of big employers. Now, let's look at each one. A supply chain crisis. A lot of countries are facing supply chain issues, but Britain's supply chain issues have been exacerbated by the end of cabotage and sort of European drivers not coming to the UK, as well as European workers. Also, the changes around tax rules, the IR35 thing. Energy price rises. Now, there are global energy price rises, but the EU does have some small amount of control over energy prices, with them being in the internal, them having the internal energy market, which means the EU can regulate prices a bit more, especially because they are a big purchaser of energy from third countries. The UK does not benefit from that anymore, and the EU could say, like, we're going to stop selling gas and other sort of supplies to third countries, so that we have more in-house within the EU, and that will help stop price rises as much, especially with the fishing dispute and France having the levers of power. A shortage of workers, like I said, the end of freedom of movement, has had a massive impact on a lack of EU workers coming to the UK. So now that one's done, we move on to the next thing. UK business output growth hit its lowest level since March during the last national coronavirus lockdown, according to the accountancy firm BDO. Its measure fell from 105 points in September to 103. Again, these metrics are really hard to understand because they're not explained at all, but obviously it's not good. Businesses across the economy have been trying to keep up with rising demand after ending the restrictions, but persistent supply problems have prevented them from taking full advantage of opening up of society. So what you can tell from this is that, from this bit, businesses haven't been able to get the raw materials they need, and they haven't been able to get the staff that they need, and they haven't got the lorry drivers they need to move the stuff. So you've got essentially a three-pronged assault in that regard, with manufacturing essentially crawling and struggling to deal with demand, as well as hospitality and other sectors struggling to deal with demand because of the lack of supplies and the lack of staff. Then you move to rising costs, including the cost of energy. Again, we have got a global rise in energy costs, but the UK is more vulnerable to it given how much energy we import. We've even had to reopen some of the coal mines, which is not great for the environment. Manufacturing is struggling, particularly with finding the right materials. After months of disruption to production and delivery schedules caused by the lockdowns, one persistent problem has been a shortage of computer chips. Now, that again is, as the article points out, a global problem. That's issues around TSMC, and I don't think TSMC are having issues necessarily, but we know other manufacturers are having issues. Also, the fact that Intel themselves are struggling massively with manufacturing as well, and a lot of companies are struggling to produce chips, and therefore they're not going to car manufacturers because they pay less than I think AMD and Intel pay. That's why you're having these issues, as well as Nvidia, of course. When you watch so much Games Nexus, you learn quite a lot of things. So car manufacturing has struggled globally because of the lack of computer chips, but you've got to imagine getting those computer chips into the country, into the UK, is far more difficult than getting them, say, into other countries. BDO's manufacturing index dropped 2 points to 97, nearing the 95 mark, which indicates declining output, which we are seeing. Staff shortages prompted a slowdown in growth because if you don't have the raw materials you need, you can't build stuff. If you don't have the staff you need to build the stuff or to sell the stuff, you ain't doing anything, which dominates the UK economy, the services sector, which is struggling massively because of Brexit. Businesses are facing increasingly difficult winter. Let's hope it doesn't snow, said Kaylee Crosswaite, a BDO partner. Between rising inflation and the lack of staff, 2022 could be a difficult year for companies who have been forced to prioritise short-term problems over long-term growth, essentially having to do things like increase wages because they haven't been able to get the staff in. At the same time, consumers are beginning to see the impact of these shortages with rising fuel and energy prices, which may in turn lead to cutbacks in discretionary spending. Businesses maybe don't want to be as open for as many hours because the energy costs are quite high. In the few months of the year, businesses and consumers alike will be hoping that the economy can find some Christmas spirit over November and December, and help take that into the new year on a high. I mean, that's not going to happen. Exports are going to be more difficult next year because of rules of origins checks, and if the depending on how the dispute with the French fishermen goes, it might get worse. Alongside the supply difficulties, Britain is also facing rising inflation, causing a headache for the Bank of England as it tries to balance the a desire to keep prices stable without choking off the economy's recovery. The official consumer price index at 3.1% is well above the bank's 2% target. So the Bank of England are, unable to deal with the inflation crisis. Boy, do I miss Mark Carney right now. But Andrew Bailey, the current governor of the Bank of England, hasn't increased the interest rates, or the members of the Bank of England haven't increased the interest rates. BDO's measure of inflationary pressures felt by business also rose to its highest level since April 2017, while separate data from the bank NatWest showed record input cost inflation in every region of the UK barring the West Midlands. Don't know what the hell's going over in the West Midlands, but every other region of the UK struggling massively with inflation, input cost inflation. So I think that would be money to get services and get things manufactured. This one a bit I found really interesting. Some city traders appeared to have been taken by surprise last week when only 2 of the bank's 9 monetary policy committee members voted in favour of raising interest rates, even as it raised its forecast for inflation to 5% in early 2022. So essentially, the city traders were confused at why the Bank of England did not raise the interest rate. I think it's because if they do, it's going to encourage more people to save money, and also people's mortgages and things like that will go up in price, which and debts will go up a lot, which won't help the UK economy. Right now, having interest rates higher would not help the economy grow, despite the fact that inflation is quite high. Essentially they want to aim to take money out of the economy to reduce inflation, but I think if they raise the interest rates, I don't think that will help, and it'll probably make things worse. Again, I'm not an economist, that's just my kind of layman interpretation of things. Andrew Bailey was forced on Friday to explicitly say interest rates were likely to rise in the coming year. We expect interest rates to rise, and we are very clear, he said, adding that they only paused only to wait for more definite signs of inflationary wage demands. So he's saying, like, we're trying to see what the impact is on wages, which, again, wages will have to go up because inflation's going up dramatically. You're talking 5%. The cost of living is going up by a lot in this country. Petrol prices are now £1.40, £1.50 a litre. Very expensive. People are going to struggle to function. If you can't put petrol in your car, you can't go to work. Simple as. It's going to also increase the cost of public transport as well, which is going to be fun. Sebastian Burnside, NatWest chief economist, said signs of a pickup in activity and employment growth across many areas have been somewhat overshadowed by skyrocketing costs faced by businesses in all parts. He said businesses are having difficulty filling vacancies due to a tightening of the job market. We've lost access to an entire continent of people, which is not only holding back activity in some cases and contributing to rising backlogs of work, but also pushing up wages. So you've got companies which aren't able to do what they normally do. Restaurants closed at lunchtime, which is having a big impact, but also pushing up wages, which is not a bad thing. I'm not against wage increases. Evidently they're not going up for the right reasons, or at least the helpful reasons, and that's what's also causing problems. When factoring in the surging prices of energy, raw materials and transportation, this has resulted in a cost environment unlike anything we've ever seen. So if it was just wage inflation, that wouldn't be that bad. It would be great in some ways, people having more money to spend on products which will help boost the economy. It's upshot economics rather than trickle down economics. Big fan of upshot economics, money going up rather than down. But because of the surging energy prices, surging costs of raw material and transportation, just getting in the goods is costing a lot more and a lot more harder to get. That's what the main issue is. These are the things causing the main problems. Firms in almost every region and nation recorded unprecedented increases in their operating costs in October, and this will only continue into next year. This won't get that much better. I read another article which said, they managed to train 15,000 lorry drivers, this year, something around that number. And I'm like, mate, there's 100,000 lorry driver shortage. 15,000 is good, but that's not going to dent So these things are here to stay. The energy crisis will stay for a while, until supply goes back up. And because the UK is a third country, we're outside of the EU's internal energy market, which makes us have to pay more for energy rather than what other countries in the EU pay. Also, the fact that many energy companies are going bust, which means competition will go down, which means the energy companies can continue to take the British public for a ride and continue to increase costs because now there's less competition than before. It's just disaster after disaster for this government, and I just don't know anymore what they're going to do next. But the state of play is very bad at the moment for British businesses, but more importantly, the British public. And I don't know when people are going to wise up to the problems we're having in the country. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.